All right, welcome back to the Investor Empowerment Series radio show. This is episode number 41. Today I've got a special guest, Salma Bhatti, with me today. She's in the office here at Tanis, and we're going to talk about some of her experiences being a newer fix and flipper in the Chicagoland real estate market. So, Salma, please say hello to the guest. Salma's very nervous about being on this podcast, by the way, so she's a little soft-spoken. She's one of the very few females I've ever worked with in the investment side of the business that's been so ambitious and so successful, especially as a newer investor. So I'm really excited to have her on. But give us a brief introduction of who you are and how you got into this flipping business.
Hello.
Hello.
Actually, the way that I got into it was my father-in-law. He did own his property. Oh, start all over again.
We're not starting over. We'll cut it out. Don't worry.
Okay.
Trust me. It'll sound good when it's done.
Okay.
So your father-in-law had a rental property.
Right. He had a rental property, and then I started actually watching HGTV.
Okay.
And it was exciting to watch those shows. And then when I would walk into a property,
right,
I could see my vision just go off. I mean, looking into properties, and it was something that I really, really wanted to get into. So
you had some background, a little bit of background or an interest in real estate investing because your father-in-law already was kind of investing.
Right.
And then you were inspired to move to the next step of flipping.
Right.
By watching some of these shows on TV, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then you mentioned something that I like and I think is important when you're an investor, which is you got to have a vision.
Right.
So explain to me a little more what you mean by that. Like you walk through the front door and you're imagining walls in different places, or?
Well, if you walk in, and some of these properties, they're just like, they're so not opened up, and they're so closed in. So when you walk in, some people can't see that beyond that wall. So when you walk in, I feel like you could take this wall down, or you could rearrange the kitchen layout or the other rooms layout, and you can make it bigger or...
Right. No, you're good. Selma's very nervous. So the first time we met was actually at a property locally here in Algonquin. It was a property that we ended up selling to Salma for, I don't know, what was it, like $30,000 or $35,000 or something?
Yeah, close to
40.
40? Yeah,
40?
40,000.
Okay. And this house needed a ton of work, and I remember distinctly seeing this small, young female get out of this car and walk up to me like, hey, I'm here to see the house, because we had done some marketing. This was a wholesale deal. And she walked in the door, and she was like, oh my God, this is like such a great house.
Yes.
And she had this vision in her head, which I think is important to point out. And you actually moved a kitchen from one room to the other. And I know it's still in process.
Right.
You moved a kitchen from one room to another, and you rearranged some of the interior, and whole big plan that came out of that one, right?
Right. And
that's impressive.
And put the porch into a bedroom, converted the porch into a bedroom because we had porch space. Mm-hmm. So we're converting that into a bedroom. It was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. We're making it 3 bedrooms, 1.5-bath house. So
you bought the house for about $40,000.
Right.
And you think maybe you're going to flip this house, right? You're still working on it.
Yes. Because it's such a beautiful location.
It is a great location.
It's a beautiful house, beautiful location.
It's going to be beautiful. Well, it already is, actually, because I've seen
the outside.
You got everything done on the outside. You're still working on the inside, right?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great opportunity. So you turned it into a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, expanded upon what you had, which I think is great. I mean, especially for being a newer investor. Not a lot of people have that type of vision. I think that's really what's driving you, and that's why I wanted to have you on the podcast. So let's go back then and talk about some of your previous experiences and how long have you actually been involved in real estate investing on your own level?
4 years.
Okay, so 4 years, and you've done or are working on how many flips have you actually done? Completed
About 6.
Okay, yeah. And this one we just talked about is the 7th flip, right?
Correct.
Okay, so we already talked about why you wanted to get into it. You had some inspiration from your family, and you moved forward with that after getting some TV education, which is awesome. Well, hey, that's a lot of people that they got to get interested somehow, right?
I know, but it doesn't. The way it shows on TV is not as easy as when you're doing it originally.
Right.
You have
when you're doing it yourself.
Right.
So I want to jump into that a little bit later on because I want to talk a little bit more about the good and the great, and some of the more challenging experiences you've had, being a newer investor. And so tell me about, I know after we met at that first property, you brought another property to my attention, which was down in the southern, well, what was it, like not south suburbs, but a little further away.
Right.
That's the one down in Lyle. Yeah.
Right.
So what happened with that property?
Actually, I bought it from a coworker or / friend.
Okay.
Okay.
Used to be a friend.
Used to be a friend.
Right.
Sorry. And he invests in properties, and he told me it was such a great deal.
Okay.
Which I thought at that point when I was buying it, that it was a great deal. Mm-hmm. I didn't see the property after purchasing it. I trusted him. Which
you didn't see it before you bought it?
Before I bought it.
Okay.
And I trusted him, thinking that it was going to be the best deal.
Yeah, sure. What did he tell you, just so we know, you were buying it for what price? Or what did you buy it for?
$90,000.
$90,000. Down in Lyle, which is actually a really good price for that area.
Right.
So that makes sense to me. What did he tell you that you'd be able to flip it for? Or how much would it sell for?
He told me that he actually told me that the amount of money that I needed to fix it would be very less, and I could sell it easily for $149, $159.
Okay. So $60,000, actually that's what? $70,000 difference. And he told you it would only take what, like $5-10 grand to fix it up, or what?
It was close to $20 grand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was not a $20,000 job.
So what happened?
It was it needed a really intense
amount of work. Because I remember I saw the property. You did a good job. It had new kitchen, and updated bathrooms, and flooring, and did you have to do like roofs and siding and stuff, or
the roof was okay, but the siding I had to do.
So you put new siding on this property?
New siding on this property.
Okay.
And then basically, it wasn't in a good shape, so I had to really put in, good amount of money in there.
Okay. So in the end, when I got involved in the picture, we ended up renting it out.
Right. Because
you couldn't sell it.
No.
Okay. So I think
because the thing was that he did not tell me, okay, forget about the property. The amount of money it was taking, that's fine. I mean, that's understandable. But he didn't tell me that it was a flood zone.
Oh, you think that was the biggest problem?
That is the biggest problem.
Okay. I remember that now that you bring it up when we talked about that.
Right. I was told by a realtor before you that it was in a flood zone. I tried to sell it before you too.
Right.
We didn't meet at that point.
Yeah, I didn't know you.
Right.
That's
so
fine.
We met.
I'm not offended.
But I met. I told my realtor, and then she told me that it was in a flood zone.
Okay. And people had a hard time seeing that as a house they wanted to buy to live in, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
And next door neighbors couldn't sell their house for a year or two.
Right. And if I remember right, I think I ended up talking to that realtor at one point. You had brought her name into the picture.
Right.
She had said at one point that whole, like, one side of the street was actually pretty, like, underwater type flooded.
Right.
Like, the basements were actually...
Right.
So that's a pretty serious problem. And you didn't know that when you got into it. You trusted this friend of yours who was also a coworker.
Yeah, he didn't tell me that it was in the flood zone. And honestly, I mean, he made a lot of money.
Yeah.
From this property, selling it to me.
Right, he made like $50,000,
exactly.
Right? He's kind of like wholesaled it to you.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. So it sounds like he kind of took advantage of your naiveness to being an investor. You're just getting started. Yeah. You really didn't know what to do.
That was the worst deal of mine.
Of your career so far.
Yeah.
And that was the first one.
Well, actually, that was my third one.
That was the third one. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I did two before that. One was in Hanover Park and one was in Streamwood. So
before we talk about Hanover and Streamwood, which I do want to talk about, some of the lessons that we learned out of this one in Lyle were, and I think we kind of talked about it before we were prepping for the podcast. What would you do differently if you could do this all over again with this Lyle property? How would it have worked differently for you?
First of all, I wouldn't trust somebody to buy it before I did my research.
So you need to do your research.
Definitely.
Okay.
That's
due diligence.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the only thing. And location does matter.
Of course.
Whatever property, I mean, even though if you're thinking that, oh my God, you got it for such a good price.
Right.
Because at that point when I bought Lyle, I was thinking, oh, wow,
right.
I got it for such a good price.
Right.
And Lyle was...
Yeah, you did get it for a good price in perspective to Lyle and the location. That flood zone was probably the biggest thing, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
it wasn't about the amount of money that I was spending to fix it, the amount of money I was going to make, or the amount of money I was going to... If it wasn't in a flood zone, I would be okay right now.
Okay. But you're still okay, because in the end, you had an alternative exit strategy, which was you now have it as a rental.
Correct.
And it's making a little bit of money every month, right?
Yes, it is.
And someday it's going to be a paid-off property that you're going to have as an income.
Right, correct.
So I think that's a keynote for any investors that are listening, especially the newer ones. I mean, whenever you get into a fix and flip project, regardless of how good the numbers look, regardless of floodplains or the things we've talked about with dealing with different partners and trusting people, you have to be prepared that there needs to be an alternative exit, because sometimes things just don't work out, right?
Correct.
Perfect. No, that's great. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. All right, so let's talk about this property, and we don't need to get specific on the towns, but you mentioned Hanover Park, which is another suburb of Chicago, and you did a flip there. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that one.
It was actually a very clean house. It started with a very clean house that I had to just paint it. I wasn't even changing the kitchen cabinets.
Okay.
I went to Hanover Park, and
you talked to the city about getting a permit.
Permits.
Okay.
And they said that I don't need it because I wasn't changing any plumbing. I wasn't changing anything. I was basically painting it. I was putting new floors in, changing the vanity. I didn't know that changing vanity required new plumbing.
Right.
Okay, so it was my second flip at that point.
Okay.
So I didn't know. I just got into it, and then...
Sure.
So I went to the city, and that's what they told me, and then I found out I got caught.
How did you get caught?
And you won't believe, when did I get caught? The day that they were doing the final touches.
Oh, when the project was finished.
Finishing
up.
Yes, and it was just like 2 days prior to putting it on the market.
Wow.
And I got caught, and which I still didn't understand. I was trying to argue with the inspector and say that, what do you see that I'm doing wrong? Because in my head, I honestly wasn't aware of that. I needed a permit for that. Right. Because I did a flip before that, and that was a gut rehab, so I pulled permits. Right. I knew permits. And this wasn't. This was a very clean house.
Sure.
So
the inspector walked in the front door or whatever, saw your guys or whoever doing the work, and then...
And I had a dumpster outside, too.
Oh, the dumpster. They always get you on the dumpster.
Yeah.
I think the moral of the story, though, is you did... A lot of investors try to not pull permits in general and then hope they don't get caught, but you actually went to the city in advance, which is the right way to do it.
Right.
And say, hey, here's my plan, new tile, paint this... new flooring here, just cosmetic work.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, okay, well, you don't need a permit.
Right.
And then, ironically, the day you're finishing the job, somebody from the city happens to stop by and see, because they see a dumpster, is probably why, right?
Yeah, which I still feel like I didn't really need a dumpster, but my guy, when you're...
He got one. Yeah.
He got one for some reason. I mean, even though my kitchen cabinets weren't changed, I mean, some of the stuff wasn't changed like I did in my other house, but... It wasn't as bad as this one, but
so I think it's important to note that each municipality, city, village, whatever is different. And when you are a flipper and you're moving from area to area, regardless of how big that area or small it is, everybody does things differently. And you tried to do the right thing, but that doesn't mean that you can't end up in a bad spot. Because what you told me, or what happened, what did the inspector make you do?
He actually told me to, in the bathroom. We put a vanity in there, but then he told me to take that wall out and put insulation between the kitchen and the bathroom.
Yeah, which is kind of weird in itself, honestly, but okay.
Yeah, and then he made me do a lot of unnecessary stuff.
Like little piddly stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you had to actually tear out a wall, is what you're saying, and rebuild and insulate and re-drywall it and everything, and re-put the plumbing back in.
Exactly.
So that turned into a big deal.
It did, because he wanted me to hire a general contractor. A general contractor to oversee everything. He didn't want me to deal with this.
Well, he can't tell you to do that. I don't think he can tell you to do that.
That's what
you're allowed to general your... I mean, it's one thing if you're trying to pull permits claiming to be something, but if you're a homeowner, you can pull your own permits.
Okay. Yeah. So he told me to hire a general contractor.
Scare tactics. You think he was doing that because you're a female? And as you look back on it, you've done all these extra flips. Have you ever had an experience like that since?
Since I don't think so. Maybe in that one particular one.
Just that one.
Just that one.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
But you ended up getting that fixed. Probably added some time to your original plan, right? Mm-hmm. And then you sold the house.
Correct.
Successful flip.
Actually, in this flip, I would have made really good money if I hadn't been caught and had to do all that work plus hire a general contractor.
So you did hire a general contractor?
Yes, I did.
Also, then a lot of that extra profit got eaten up?
Yes, it did.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah. And then I had to hire an electrician just to come back and...
check everything.
Yeah.
That's what they do there, yes. I'm familiar.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, they want it certified by an electrician.
Right.
And there are some communities that commonly do that as well, where they say, hey, you need a roofing certification, you need a plumbing certification, where they just have a plumber run through there, or whoever, electrician run through there and make sure it's all up to code.
Right.
I think that's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's relatively inexpensive, and that's a good thing to do anyway as a flipper.
Right.
Because you don't want to have, a family move into your house with 2 little kids and have an outlet start a fire or something.
Exactly.
Right?
I want to sleep at night.
Yes.
Peacefully.
That's
thinking
great.
that whatever projects I do it. I give it 110%. I just don't do it for the profits.
Sure.
I do it so a family lives in there, hoping that it's their
house.
Their house.
Yeah, and they love it.
They love it.
Okay.
That's what I want.
So yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say is you use the word caught, and I don't know if that's a good word, because you actually tried. You went to the city before you even started the project. You told them what you wanted to do. You laid out what your plan was, and they said you don't need a permit.
Correct.
And granted, in hindsight, you really can't do anything about it, but
right.
You tried to do the right thing, which I think is that's 90% of it.
Exactly.
It's not like you were trying to hide a problem.
I wasn't, but when they caught me, or whenever the inspector walked inside the house, I still don't understand when he walked in. What did he see? What did I do? What can I have done differently? Do you know what I mean?
Right. Sure. And I don't have that answer. I don't know if anybody does other than that inspector. But sometimes these guys are just looking to, I wouldn't say cause problems, but they're looking to justify what they do. So he goes in there and he sees that work was obviously done.
Yes.
And he finds something that he knows that he could probably tell you, well, we got to make sure this was done right. So in order to do that, you got to tear out a wall. It's not necessarily the right answer, but that's just the way sometimes the world works, especially when you're a flipper. That can happen. So that was unfortunate, but you ended up selling the property, right?
Correct.
Making some money on it.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
I did.
Good. That's great.
Yeah.
All right. So we talked about a couple of your first flips. Let's talk about and this. You've had some ups and downs in this business. You've explained them. I appreciate that. Not a lot of people are as humble as you are that are willing to come on a podcast and say, "Yeah, here's some of the challenges I've faced." So I love the fact that you're being honest, and I think a lot of people are going to appreciate that as well. Let's talk about the newest flip. Let's talk about Megan.
Okay.
So, what's changed? What have you learned in the last 4 years? Because now this Megan Street property is a great opportunity. You're going to make a good amount of money on it. It's probably your most successful flip. Is that safe to say?
Yes.
As far as financial profit and stuff.
Yes, it is.
Great.
It is.
So what's changed? What can you offer the listener and say like what mistakes you made or what things have you learned that they can learn from as well over this last 6 flips or your 7 flips that you're in the middle of?
Okay, for this property, first of all, it started with the right person who I trusted.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, to get me this property.
Right. So you got a wholesale deal from me and Dan Clark.
Correct.
Right. That's fine.
Correct. And what I've learned from Main Street is to trust you guys to get me the right property.
Right.
And this property, when I got it, it was, well, you did guide me through it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And
a little bit. I didn't do much.
but yeah, it was a little help.
Sure, whatever.
But I realized that in other flips that as you learn to work with the contractors, and each contractor or each house that you work with has different contractors.
Sure. So you're using different contractors.
Different contractors, for sure.
And you're seeing a big difference between them.
Between them.
So what can you offer the listener about working with contractors then? I mean, how do you figure out who the right contractor is on your properties? Is there a secret sauce, or just luck of the draw, or
you know what,
getting to know more contractors?
No, actually, you start working with them, and then you understand how they work, and then you just keep on trusting them, I think.
Okay.
The most, on Megan, I would just say that it was a very good deal from you guys. I mean, that's all I could say is...
Right. So you bought a house from us.
Yeah.
Wholesale deal for $125,000.
Yeah. It was...
You paid cash. You closed in a couple of weeks. Is exactly how it's supposed to work.
Right.
So how much money did you invest in that property to like fix it up?
Around $45,000.
Yes. So you bought it for $125,000. You put $45,000 into it. And I know just on the brokering side, because I listed this property a couple weeks ago, and we're currently under contract for $224,000 with a buyer that is going to close in the middle of May. This is now April 6th. So about a month from now, month and 2 weeks from now, they're going to close for $224,000. They're putting 20% down. We had 3 rounds of multiple offers on this thing. Everybody loved it. Everybody wanted it. So what did you do differently on this one? That really, well, let me ask that a different way. Did you have any situations in the past with your other flips that resulted in so much interest in the property? I think it's the design.
Except for the one in Streamwood on Coast. I did 2 properties in Streamwood.
Okay.
The one in Cawson.
Go ahead.
Okay, I did 2 properties. So one of the properties in Streamwood.
Right.
I had a really good interest in that.
What do you mean?
Like, I had a multiple offer situation.
Oh, you did?
Too. Yeah.
Okay, great.
And then Megan is another one that I did.
You had a lot of people. I mean, we had like 40 showings there in the last few weeks.
Right.
We had probably 15 offers. Did you think it was the design of the property, like your color choices, any of that stuff? That, I mean, that's what I think.
I don't want to say that.
You don't want to say that? What?
I don't think I did anything. I just think it's the location, or maybe I just don't want to talk about me.
Oh, okay.
But I think it more has to do with the location of the property and just the feel of it. I mean, both properties, when I walked in, Megan, it just, I don't know, I just felt really good about it.
Right.
That it was just so, if what I could do with it.
Right.
And the same one in Streamwood, what I can do with it. Because, again, they were both dark.
Yep. And
bringing light into it,
right?
I could just see that,
right.
And that's what happened with both of them. That it just sparked up. I mean,
so opening up properties, brightening them up, color patterns that do that, windows. Yeah. One thing you different on Megan too is that the first time you actually staged a property.
Yes, I did.
So that seemed to actually help too, right?
Right.
The staging.
Yes.
Which would you spend? You spent like $2,000 on that, right?
Correct.
Okay. So you spent $2,000 on staging, and I would say most definitely we listed the house for $224,900, and now it's under contract for $224,000. So when you list a house normally, like for a retail location, just as a broker, you list it at whatever the price is, $100,000. You're going to expect to get $95,000, right?
Correct.
I mean, that's kind of the way most people think about it.
Right.
In this case, we're able to achieve almost asking price, and as a matter of fact, in the multiple offers, we had offers that were a little bit higher, but the buyers just weren't as qualified. So we chose to work with this particular buyer because they're the strongest one. So Salma made the best decision by saying, rather than take a chance that one of these buyers isn't financially capable of closing, we're going to go with the best one who's putting 20% down, and so on and so forth, which I think is awesome. So staging helped in that situation. And I also think you mentioned that you don't think that was necessarily the design choices or the vision, and you don't want to talk about how you're responsible for that, even though you are. I'm gonna have to say honestly, part of our marketing for these properties is on Facebook and obviously on the MLS for the retail buyer pool, and social media as well. In addition to Facebook, it goes on Twitter or whatever, YouTube. I got a lot of people that were commenting on what you did with that kitchen. So I think you need to be complimented on those choices, because I put a lot of, we deal with a lot of properties here. And very rarely do I have random people that I talk to once every 6 months send me a message and say, that kitchen looks awesome. So what you did there was you did dark floors,
correct,
dark cabinets,
right,
and like a pure white counter,
yeah,
and white backsplash.
White backsplash with gray grout.
with Greg Grout. And I got probably at least 5 or 6 people that commented specifically on the kitchen. Where they're asking me about this property. They didn't remember the specific address, but like, oh, you just listed this house over there in Algonquin, and man, it looks awesome. I want to see it. And I'm like, which house? We have a couple listed in Algonquin. It turned out it was Selma's flip. After I started asking more questions, I had a really high amount of interest, and I think the kitchen really, really popped that. I think you did a great job, and as an investor, and what the listeners also need to hear is the important things that you need to focus on when you're flipping a house, right?
Yes.
So what do you go ahead, explain what you focus on.
I mostly focus on the kitchen. Kitchen because it's the
focal point, right?
Right, the focal point. And I think the bathrooms
are
another, and making the family room really cozy. So if there's not a family room, then you can't do it. But like in Megan's case, we had a family room, which led to the backyard really well. I mean, the windows were really big enough. So it led to the backyard, and that's what my main focus is: the kitchen, the bathrooms.
Okay. And then the family room, making it cozy.
Yeah, I did put those bookshelves in there.
Yeah, I saw that. Those came out really nice.
Yeah,
it was a good idea.
So just to do little things. I believe in detail oriented.
Sure.
To make a home.
Sure. Pay attention to little things.
Little things. That's what I really believe, and that's what my main focus is. Even my contractors think that I'm crazy at some point when I'm going back and forth, trying to pick on little things.
Right.
But that's my thing is that I have
the small details.
Yes, small details counts for me.
I think that's. I think that needs to be said because most contractors, I shouldn't say it. I said most contractors. They're not. They're like 90%ers, right? They give you a 9.5 out of 10.
Right.
But you always can find little things in almost every room that they could have probably put a little bit more effort into.
Yes.
And I think there's also a large number of investors that are of the same belief that are like, hey, put lipstick on a pig type thing. Let's just get this done. Let's paint the wall. Oh, there's a couple blemishes on it. And you're the type of person that looks at those little details.
Yes.
And for the extra $100,
I'd rather get that done.
Gets it done right.
Right. I want it.
And that's huge.
Yeah.
And that's what results in getting full asking price on a house that you're flipping. So, we went over the numbers real quick, and we're not gonna analyze them too deeply. But you bought a house for $125,000. You put $45,000 into it. My quick numbers tell me that's you got an overall investment, not including utilities and insurance, which we're going to call soft costs. Your hard cost in this property about $170,000, and you have it listed or you have it under contract for $224,000. So that's a great, after closing costs and the broker commission that I charge, which is reduced, by the way. You're gonna walk away with a good profit on this. So that's awesome.
Right.
Okay, so. We went over how you got started, what some of the challenges you had, now some of the successes. Is there anything else you want to bring up right now before I ask you a few more questions?
No.
Okay. One thing I wanted to bring up is, you took the time today to come on the show. You're really nervous.
I am.
I appreciate you coming out of your shell a little bit. I know you come to some of the networking meetings and you're still trying to get acclimated to how that all works. Salma is an active cash buyer. So she's looking for properties in the Chicagoland area, in the suburbs of Chicago. She closes quickly. We've never had an issue on our end. I think we've wholesaled you handful of, two properties now?
Correct.
Okay, two or three. Two. And that, to me, she's a great investor to work with. So if there's anybody out there that is looking to sell a property to an investor like Salma, she is available. Contact me, and I can put you guys in touch with each other. Now, that said, what advice would you give yourself if you could look back on what you've done over the last 4 years and give yourself some pointers back in the beginning that you've learned in the process? What would that be?
Never trust anybody. Sorry.
That doesn't sound like. Okay, do you trust me?
I do.
Okay.
But you build that trust.
Okay, so
remember the first time we met? I don't know if you recall, but I told you that I don't trust easily.
Okay.
Because I had.
Well, you are a woman.
Oh, God. Okay. I think women trust more easily. I think that's how I got into Lyle. I trusted somebody really.
Well, because you knew that person.
Exactly.
Right.
And you wouldn't imagine that the person you know would hurt you like that.
Okay. I could see where you're coming. I get what you're saying about that.
Okay,
so now you're saying be more cautious when you're working with not new, but when you have relationships you're establishing, be cautious with those people before you commit financially to them, right?
Exactly.
And I do want to bring up one more thing about that. There was a property that you wanted to buy across from that house in Algonquin, the one on May Street, and you were really interested in it. You had a contract on it.
Right.
And I know I blew up your deal, but I went over there probably because at that point you did trust me, and I told you.
Yes,
you don't want
I think
anything
I started
to do,
trusting you after that.
because I told you not to do it.
Right.
Instead of saying, yeah, do it.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, well, sometimes it takes time, though. You got to build relationships with people.
Right.
And I talk about that on the podcast a lot about, and I know we said networking already, but it's really about building relationships with the right people, and I freaking bring it up every podcast, and I think that's the message to write home about, especially when you're a new investor. You got to be careful the people that you decide to work with, and who you're going to commit any funding to, and who you're going to pay $20,000 to for an education platform, and who you're really going to believe in that's going to help guide you on the path. So there are people out there that are doing things right. Yes. Selma has now gone from starting with a couple properties to where maybe she only made a little bit of money and had a couple bad experiences or challenges, we'll call them, now to working on a level where you're doing a couple of flips per year. You want to get more, right?
Yes, I do.
How many flips a year are you trying? Ideally, how many do you want to do?
Ideally, I mean, this year I want to do 4.
Okay, I think that's
I'm on my
a realistic
one.
number. Yeah. You're on your second one.
Second one, and I want to do 1 rental.
Well, we talked about that because there's one rental that I'd probably be able to find, or I have that I'm going to end up tossing your way here once we get things finalized with the actual seller. So the advice you say to your younger self would be about, we're not going to say don't trust people, but trust. You got to be careful with who you're going to work with.
Just be cautious when you're trusting. Do not just jump into a property.
Sure.
I would say.
I think that's good advice, right?
Yeah. What I've learned is that just do your own research before you just hand off your money to somebody.
Absolutely. And how do you, I mean, aside from calling me and saying, hey, I found this property, here's the address, what do you think? How does somebody who maybe doesn't have those types of relationships do some of that research? Like if you had an address like we're going to go look at a property today after this podcast.
Correct.
What do you think could be researched in order to find out how to do that? If you're not a broker, I mean, are you using Zillow, or how does that work for you?
Well, yeah, I'm using Zillow, realtors.com. That's what I do.
Realtor.com?
Right. Okay. And then I'll go and look at the property.
Sure.
That's the best. Look around the neighborhood. See how many flips are happening.
Great. So you drive the neighborhood and you actually see that there's flips going on. You know that there's probably more opportunity there.
Right. And
good.
That's what I didn't do in my. I just trusted. I mean,
that was
I wouldn't do that again.
Sure.
Ever.
Okay. How did you? I know we talked about how you got started and your family having some rentals and things like that. But I mean, how do you? I mean, what type of other than experience, you going through the school of hard knocks, what did you do to educate yourself in this space?
Honestly, TV shows.
TV shows. All right.
Oh, my God.
Which is fine. Well, it's funny you say that because now that the market is good, the amount of investors that are coming out of the woodwork now, the last couple months, is amazing. Like, everybody's trying to get into flipping.
Right.
Everybody. And, we're kind of making jokes about you want to pick the right colors and stuff, but that's what happens in a lot of these flips, and a lot of them fail because there'll be a husband and wife situation or whatever, and the wife will be like, no, we have to have this here.
Yeah.
When really it doesn't matter. It doesn't add value to the property.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't create a bigger net on your bottom line. It just costs more.
Right.
And it might look good,
yes,
but it doesn't put any money in your pocket when you make those decisions. So I think through your TV show education and talking to me a lot, hopefully, you've actually learned to make the better choices on what needs to be put into a flip, how to spend your money, how to budget correctly. Because I know you've gotten into some situations where the budget was not what it was supposed to be.
No.
And you've moved past that, and that was all stuff you've experienced and you've learned from.
Right.
Okay.
But as what they show on the television, it's not as easy as 1, 2, 3.
Sure.
It is really, really hard.
That's why it's TV.
Yeah.
Right?
They show it very easily, but it's not.
Right. It's not being a flipper is a hard job.
It is a hard job.
And it is a job. It's not necessarily an investment. It's a job.
It's a job.
Right.
It's just not that you're investing all this money, but it's actually you're working. I feel like you're working nonstop because your head is always thinking.
Right. Let's talk about that with materials and stuff. I mean, how does it work with your contractors? Are you Are they picking out? Well, you already said you're the one making the design choices.
Right, correct.
Are you going to, the big box store and picking out, so your local Home Depot, whatever, you picking out the sinks and vanities and all that stuff?
Yes.
So you choose all that stuff. Do they come pick it up? How do you manage the contractors that way? How does that work?
Well, usually, sometimes I'll have the contractors pick it up. I'll pick it up.
Mm-hmm. So one or the other.
Right. And then I make sure that I do the choices before they pick up anything.
Sure.
And or I'll have it delivered. So.
Oh, you do have it delivered. No, it's good.
I do have delivery.
Yeah,
Some places I
do
will not
too.
send the contractors, or I'll do it. I'll have them deliver it to the house. Yeah.
What do you think is, just to wrap up on the contractor side, because that's one of the biggest challenges with flipping is working with the contractor. What would you say is the biggest challenge you face with contractors in general?
Showing up on the job.
You have problems with them showing up?
Yeah, as a woman, sometimes they don't take me seriously.
Okay.
Especially being
small.
They don't take me seriously, so you really have to
harp on them.
Yeah.
So you need to set. So the advice to the listener would be set the expectation up front of what you want out of them.
That's what I did differently with Megan, I would say.
There you go. That was the answer I was looking for. That's what you did differently.
Yes.
You told the contractor what you expected every day.
This is what I expected. This is what I want. And this is how many weeks it's going to take. I was giving them...
Okay. That's great.
Stuff.
Right. So you're not relying on them to tell you it's going to take a month to finish this or that. You're saying, no, you got 2 weeks.
This should be done.
Yeah, this should be done. Okay. Yeah. Cool.
That's what I did differently, I would say.
That's great. Well, that's all part of the process, right? And I mean, even myself as an investor, I'm not as diligent as you are with a lot. I know you're very particular about timelines because you even told me next Tuesday we are going to have the pictures and we're listing the house on Friday. And I'm like, whoa! I'm like, hold on a second. Let me go over there and make sure it's ready. And you're very on top of the schedule, and I think that's important when you're working. Not even just contractors, but in any business, you have to set the expectation and make sure people meet that expectation. If they don't, maybe you need to move on to a different relationship with a different contractor. Okay, cool. That was all I really have today, unless you want to bring anything else up.
I'm good. I'm really shy and nervous on
this. You did great. This was great. Salma is. I mean, this is an inspiration to any investor who's just getting started or who's newer to the business or hasn't done anything yet, that it is possible to start off with, kind of just jumping with your feet in the fire. That's taking action is the key, I think, the whole message that I'm trying to get across with these next couple podcasts. Successful, newer investors and the story behind them and how they did it. And Salma is a great example of that. She is now, I would consider to be a very serious flipper. She has bought several properties, wholesales that Dan and I have offered out to the public. She has figured out how to do the research, how to work with contractors, how to make the right design choices, and it is possible to get into this business and make money, and Salma is a great example of that. So, that said, this is the Investor Empowerment Series radio show, episode number 41. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you, Salma.
Thank you.
You did a great job.